Wellstar network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Monday, March 27, 2023, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. State elected officials are calling out a Fulton County, Georgia medical system for health care redlining after closing one of two emergency rooms in a low-income minority community. We'll talk with the Fulton County Commission Chair about ensuring residents get the health care they deserve in the Atlanta area. This year marked the 55th anniversary of the Memphis Sanitation Workers Strike. We'll talk with the President of AFSCME, Saunders, about what's being done to commemorate the event where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. We lost two amazing folks over the weekend. First, we'll honor New Jersey's longest-serving black legislator, Ron Rice, and the iconic Randall Robinson, the activist, author, and founder of Trans Africa. We'll speak with folks who knew Robinson well, including Congresswoman Maxine Waters, as well as a member of the Commission of the National African American Reparations Committee, Reverend Robert Turner. Folks, it is time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, the Georgia area hospital is being called out for health care redlining after years of subpar care in minority communities. Georgia state and local officials are calling for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the IRS to investigate the Wellstar health system after Wellstar closed two hospitals that serve primarily black populations while continuing to operate hospitals in affluent white areas in the Atlanta area. Wellstar Health System, one of Georgia's largest healthcare organizations, announced it was closing due to a decline in revenue. Georgia lawmakers allege Wellstar violated Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act because the closure will inordinately impact communities of color. The health system may have violated tax law by closing its doors and failing to comply with the requirements to retain its tax-exempt status. Grady Memorial Hospital is now the only emergency room for residents in that area. To discuss how this move will impact people of color, we're joined by Rob Pitts, the Fulton County, Georgia Commission Chairman. Glad to have you on the show, Rob. So walk us through here. First of all, Wellstar, is this a nonprofit entity?
It is a nonprofit entity that's a very successful nonprofit entity. Operates two facilities, actually more than two facilities within Fulton County. But there's one in South Fulton County and in one of our 15 cities called East Point. They made a decision to close that facility based upon what they led me and others to believe were the fact that as a corporation, they were losing about $100 million a year. I think that's the right number. And so being a businessman, when they first came to me and explained that they were having problems, financial problems, they would therefore have to at first cut back on the services that what they were offering at the East Point facility, I understood it from a business point of view, that because at the same time, their major facility was in the city of Atlanta, the northern part of our county, also in south part of the county, but the northern part of the south part, if that makes sense. That hospital had been there for about a century, originally known as Georgia Baptist Hospital. It was acquired by Wellstar some years ago, and they had operated it. So after closing, making a decision to cut back on services at the East Point location, which is pretty much just a clinic, then all of a sudden we found out that they were going to close the big dog, which is the one that's inside the city of Atlanta. And that's quite frankly when, all hell broke loose. But again, being a businessman, I sort of understood what they were saying. But the more we looked into it, we began to see a pattern and the pattern was pretty disturbing. And I compared it to, in real estate, the term about redlining. Well, here, this looked like it was healthcare redlining to me, because I began to work with a couple of our state legislators, Senator Nan Orrock in particular. So we decided that we're going to have to step up our game here and really put more pressure on Wellstar. We had the civil rights community, other activists, healthcare activists, poor and brown people activists who were calling out Wellstar, but we thought that our next effort should be more political pressure. So I, along with a couple of state senators, a couple of state representatives, got together for a major press conference at which we announced that we would be filing 2 complaints, and they're just complaints at this point in time. The first one would be with the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Civil Rights, within that department, looking at any Title VI violations. More importantly, the second complaint was with the IRS. There we would be challenging their nonprofit status, because they are a nonprofit corporation, and as such, they receive certain tax benefits. But at the same time, they're also required to do certain things, provide certain services for the public good. And that's why we decided to go those 2 routes. One, first complaint, Department of Health and Human Services. Second, with the IRS. Fast forward, a week later, we put our thinking caps on and said, well, those 2 are okay, but let's find something that will have a little more teeth. So at our next Fulton County Board of Commissioners meeting, which was about a week ago, Wednesday, we decided to ask and to direct our county attorney to prepare a complaint that would go to the Department of Justice. The reason we decided to go to Department of Justice, in addition to the Department of Health and Human Services and the IRS, because it's our understanding and belief that the Department of Justice has more teeth. So we are approaching it from 3 prongs right now: Health and Human Services, IRS, and the Department of Justice. And we believe that the facts are going to be on our side and support the fact that Wellstar has engaged in healthcare redlining and creating health deserts in the southern portion of Fulton County, which is the largest county in the state of Georgia, and one of the more populous counties in the United States of America. So we think that we're on the right track here. It's a travesty what Wellstar has done. They're resorting to hiring lobbyists and PR firms now to attack what we're doing, to attack me personally. But we know, and I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we are on the right side here and that we will prevail in the final analysis. All this being said, when they were closing hospitals in the Black and brown communities that serve primarily Black people and some brown people, they kept a hospital here, their most profitable one, or one of their most profitable ones, open in the predominantly white part of Fulton County. So, as I said, Ray Charles could see what's going on here if you just take a close look at what's happening. At the same time, they were going to use some of the money that they were making to expand their facility in Columbia County, which is near Augusta, Georgia. They're a wealthy white community that they're going to open a facility there. So again, when you look at what's going on, it was impossible not to be upset, not to be concerned for the health care of Black and brown communities, which they were abandoning. And we made a decision, we drew a line in the sand. And again, this is happening in Fulton County right now, but I'm of the belief, and the feedback that I'm getting, that this healthcare redlining is playing out nationally. So that's where we are as we speak today.
And of course, let's not forget, these folks get tax breaks by being a nonprofit organization.
So
and they run it like a for-profit, and they want revenues like a for-profit.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. So we're going at the pocketbook now. We've been talking about it, but now, so let's get serious. So they're going to play the money game. Let us play the money game on the other side. So if we can get that civil rights violation, Title VI, the IRS looking at their nonprofit status, and then we get the Department of Justice going after them. And then, you know, the silly thing happened on their part. Now they're in a fight with our new lieutenant governor over a situation that's not exactly like this, but I mean, you're gonna attack black and brown people in the most populous county in the state of Georgia, and then you're gonna get in a fight with the lieutenant governor of the state. They're getting some bad advice and counsel from someplace, because the facts are on our side. And let me also add that within Fulton County, we have the Morehouse School of Medicine, and we've been working with Morehouse School of Medicine to really to quantify everything that we believe that relates to this healthcare redlining, and we will have the results of that study available to the public in the next 7 to 10 days. And I'm certain that it will show beyond a shadow of a doubt that Wellstar has engaged in healthcare redlining. Not only did we lose and did our community lose hospital beds, but what happens is that when a hospital closes and the beds go away, the practices that are affiliated with that hospital, whether it's OBGYN, cardiology, diabetes, all these practices, they go and leave the community as well. So the people who've been accustomed to seeing their personal physician of their choice in their community through the years, babies born there, now babies having babies born in these places, they're gone. So that's where the healthcare desert comes in, and that's where the healthcare redlining takes place. So again, not only is it happening here in Fulton County, but again, I believe that it is a national situation that's happening, not just with Wellstar, but Wellstar is our target right now.
All right, then. All right, Rob Pitts, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, gotta go to a break. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
I'm Chrisette Michelle.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So before the break, we discussed the 2 federal complaints filed against the medical system in Fulton County with Rob Pitts. Joining us right now from my panel, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, Dean of College of Ethics Studies, California State University of Los Angeles, Renita Shannon, former representative, Georgia State Representative, and Dr. Jason Nichols, Senior Lecturer, African American Studies Department, University of Maryland, College Park. Renita, I'll start with you. I'm familiar with Memorial Hermann in Houston being nonprofit, and a lot of people, when they've had issues in the past, folks were critical as well about them. And the thing that jumps in terms of when they start making decisions, firing folks, stuff along those lines. But this is a perfect example of, okay, you're nonprofit, you're taking advantage of tax breaks, but you're trying to operate like you're a for-profit company. You can't have it both ways.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head. It's very disappointing what's going on with Wellstar, because the complaint is that folks are seeing that Wellstar is saying that they are having to close hospitals in Black and brown, predominantly Black and brown areas, but yet we publicly also know that Wellstar is working to not only expand but acquire other hospitals in predominantly white areas. So you can't have it both ways, where Wellstar is saying, oh, we financially can't afford to keep these locations, but you have the ability to expand and acquire in other places. And so you hit the nail on the head about Wellstar being a nonprofit, but operating like a corporation. And it's not that hospitals don't have the right to make money, but their math is not mathing. And this is really not squaring with the public. And so this is really disappointing, because for so long, Wellstar, when you talked about community hospitals, at least at the Capitol, Wellstar had a reputation of being one of the better players when it came to community hospitals. But now, over the last year, seeing from these closures in predominantly Black and brown places to what I'm being told from my sister who works at Wellstar, you've even got things going on like racial microaggressions being hurled at Black employees disguised as professional development from managers. And so I don't know what is going on with Wellstar, but it is something that they need to take care of. And as the chairman pointed out, they are getting some bad counsel, and it's really showing.
The thing here, Julianne, we've seen this stuff happen in other places. And here's what people also have to understand here. The law says that if someone goes into an emergency room, they have to provide service. And you have these hospitals that complain about, oh, these, we're not getting paid for these services. It's costing us money. A lot of these private hospitals be turning people away and sending them to the public hospital for them to be serviced. So I think it is proper for there to be an audit of this company's books to say, okay, y'all keep saying you're losing $100 million. Let's see.
Roland, part of the challenge here is that these companies say they want to be nonprofit, but they are for-profit. And so they turn people away. We've seen a long history of people sending folks from the Wellstars to another hospital because they don't want to deal with them. And it's wrong. What we're looking at here at the end of the day is the ways that health disparities visit our communities very abruptly and very viscerally. And so, as Renita said, her sister is there. There are other nurses and doctors who understand, but they're looking at a business model, as the brother that you interviewed earlier said, a business model, not a health model. And the challenge with that is that when you look at a business model, you want to maximize profits. When you look at a health model, you want to have tax write-offs. These folks want to have it both ways, and it's unacceptable. They want to deal with a business model to make money, but a health model to get tax deductions. They can't have it.
Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make my comments pretty short and sweet. And I think it comes down to the fact that medicine and healthcare needs to be provided to everyone under all circumstances. Of course, we know that healthcare providers are devoted to that, and they take a Hippocratic oath. But people who are administrators and business people are thinking about this in terms of pocketbooks and change. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that we need Medicare for all in this country. We need for people to be able to walk into a hospital and get care and not have to worry about what their insurance card says, whether it's expired or any of that kind of stuff, or getting a huge bill in the mail afterward. And hospitals should not be thinking about profits. They should be thinking about caring for people. And these administrators, some of them probably, if there's somebody who needs to be put out of business, it's these administrators that are worried about businesses. Let them go work at, some tech company. But, people who are concerned with healthcare and with keeping the sick healthy and keeping people's diseases manageable, those are the things that we should be thinking about and who we should be subsidizing from the government. That should come from the government. And you call me a socialist, I'll accept that term. But I think that's where we need to go as a country.
Well, again, it does expose the cracks, if you will, in our healthcare system when you talk about how do you actually deal with people who are getting care. And unfortunately, Renita, we have lawmakers, especially in the South, who don't want to do Medicaid expansion. That has also exacerbated the problem with hospitals, especially rural hospitals.
Absolutely. And I saw today that North Carolina has decided to expand Medicaid. So now Georgia is one of 10 states remaining that will not expand Medicaid, which is just completely ridiculous because we understand the situation that's going on in Georgia. We have some of the highest uninsured population. And what that translates into is more Black and brown death. That translates into what we already have, which is Georgia's one of the worst for maternal mortality. People just trying to give birth and dying in the process. And after giving birth, it translates to poor health outcomes for the entire state. And so once again, you have folks making political decisions that are just based on politics, but not based on what is actually best for Georgians.
And that, to me right there, Julian, is a constant problem where you have lawmakers who complain about one thing but do another when it comes to refusing to accept those federal dollars. But then you have these horrible health outcomes, and then they want to complain about that. I mean, this is what happens in a country where, again, profit goes before people.
Healthcare is a human right. We have to really deal with that. It's a human right. And there are so many, I don't want to call them Republicans, but that's what they are, who really do not want to have human rights enforced. The fact is that there are so many states, and Renita has really lifted up Georgia, but there's so many other states where Medicare expansion will make a huge difference in the quality of people's lives. They don't want to make that difference. They want to exploit people. And the exploitation really boils down to how can we take the most from people and leave them with the least? And when we do that, what we learn is that people are not being nurtured. But this, if you're just a predatory capitalist, that's okay. Well, it's not okay. But the bottom line, Roland, is we're basically taking our seed corn, which is our children, and we're eating it now as opposed to investing in it later. We are taking our young people and saying, you don't matter to us because we can exploit you. And that's where we are. And we see it with all kind of legislation, Roland. We see it with the reduction of child labor legislation. We see it so many places, but the bottom line is these folks decided that people do not matter, that profits matter more than people.
All right, then. Hold tight 1 second, folks. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about that very issue his entire life, but especially on April 3rd, 1968 at Mason Temple when he spoke for the last time publicly. And of course, April 4th of this year marks the 55th anniversary of his assassination. He was there in Memphis standing with sanitation workers. We'll talk with the president and CEO of the union they were a part of, AFSCME, and talk about what the effort is for this year. I want to commemorate that, but also keep the focus on the rights of workers. We'll talk with Lee Saunders next on Roland, Martin Unfiltered on Black Star Network. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button. Folks, we should easily get 1,000 likes. Go ahead, you'll see you commenting, hit the like button as well. Then, of course, please follow us. Go to download our app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Don't forget, you can now catch us on Amazon News by simply going to the Amazon Fire TV app. And then you can click Amazon News. If you have Alexa, say, Alexa, play news from Black Star Network. It will play our audio. Don't forget, we also need your support, folks. The advertisers don't give us the same respect they do white media companies. Your dollars matter, allowing for us to be able to stay in business. We are down right now. We are down. We're trending right now. In the month of March, we did about $50,000. We need to raise $100,000 every single month from our fan base. And so please contribute to our efforts. Check and money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That raises $1 million. That goes a long way. I told y'all our monthly expenses are about $190,000 for this show, for the 5 other shows on the Black Star Network, as we are also building and adding other distribution platforms. And so we're building, but the revenue has to be there as well. And so those of you who give during the show, I'll give you a personal shout out. Again, we are asking our fan base to give on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. And so please, if you give less, we appreciate that. If you give more, we appreciate that as well. And so please support us in everything that we do to make this possible. And don't forget to get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores everywhere. You can also download your copy on Audible. We'll be right back.
A lot of these corporations or people that are running stuff push black people if they're doing a certain thing. What that does is it creates a butterfly effect of any young kid who, you know, wants to leave any situation they're in, and the only people they see are people that are doing this. So I gotta be a gangster, I gotta shoot, I gotta sell, I gotta do this in order to do it. And it just becomes a cycle. But when someone comes around and is making other, we don't, you know, they don't want to push it or put money into it. So that's definitely something I'm trying to fix too, is just show there's other avenues. You don't gotta be a rapper, you don't gotta be a ball player, you can be a country singer, you can be an opera singer, you can be a damn whatever, you know? Showing the different avenues, and that is possible, and it's hard for people to realize it's possible until someone does it.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Bill Duke.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered. Stay woke.
So there we talk about Dr. King being assassinated in Memphis. Everybody leaves out why he was in Memphis. He was actually in Memphis standing with the sanitation workers who went on strike actually in February. We've talked about this a lot before because, again, he was there standing with workers. It was Reverend Jim Lawson who made the phone call for Dr. King. The sanitation workers said they wanted him to come there. He actually made the phone call, brought him there, brought the national cameras there, and the attention on what's happening with those sanitation workers. They were going through really some shameful and despicable practices. Some of the workers were actually killed when they were actually, it was a rainstorm, and they were actually killed in one of the trucks where they were actually taking cover. And so every year there's a commemoration of the assassination, but the emphasis needs to be on why he was there and the work that continues. Of course, you might remember that speech he gave Mason Temple, April 3rd, 1968. Everybody always talks about that speech. They call it the mountaintop speech. But y'all know, I keep reminding you, you need to go back and read or watch the entire speech. It was a 43-minute, 16-second speech where Dr. King talked about economics in that speech. That was a radical economic speech. He talked about the Black collective. He talked about us actually boycotting businesses that don't do business with African Americans. He talked about African Americans also putting money in Black banks. And so it's a hugely important sermon that goes beyond just the mountaintop stuff at the bottom of the speech most folks have heard, as opposed to everything else that he said in that speech. Joining me in the studio is Lee Saunders. He's the president of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees. Those workers were AFSCME workers. So Lee, glad to have you here in the studio. And so let's, the thing about this every year is that folk actually don't talk about why he was there. So the emphasis is just on him. He gives a speech, he gets assassinated, but he was there standing and fighting on behalf of sanitation workers, garbage workers.
He was standing up for the rights and dignity of sanitation workers, African Americans, who had been mistreated for so long in the city of Memphis, who had no seat at the table. And they wanted to join a union and be a part of a union. They were a part of AFSCME Local 1733 to get the respect that they deserved, to get the wage increases that they deserved, and health benefits and safety and health conditions. And Dr. King understood the importance of involving himself in that struggle. When those two sanitation workers were killed, they were crushed in a truck that malfunctioned because, as you said, they were getting out of the bad weather. And they went into the back of the truck, and the truck closed and actually crushed them. And that's what started the strike, when the workers said, enough is enough, and we've got to stand up for our rights. We've got to stand up. We are men. And if you remember, the signs that they carried simply said this: I am a man. We cannot forget that struggle. Dr. King gave his life because he understood the connection between labor rights, civil rights, human rights, and economic rights. You're so right in understanding that he believed that the only way that you get out of the mess that you were in Memphis was to provide dignity and respect and money and health benefits and safety and health measures to those workers, and that's what he fought for.
When they were there, and again, we're talking about 1,100 folks went on strike. 1,300. So this was a massive. In
1968, right. 1,300 African-American sanitation workers going on strike, that says something.
And for folks who don't know, they were being paid what?
Oh, it was peanuts compared to the days that they were working, the overtime that they had to work, and they were not getting overtime pay. The sanitation work back then was nothing like it is now. They actually had to carry buckets of trash on the top of their heads, with the trash seeping down and going into their hair and their skin and their clothing. They did that every single day for slave wages and not having the union there to represent them. And that's why they finally said enough was enough. We can't take this anymore. The only thing that we can do is to go on strike and withhold our labor. And fortunately, they were not alone. Dr. King came down, the religious community in Memphis was very supportive, the civil rights community, the labor community was very supportive, and it was a big struggle, but we understood the importance of it. And this is something that we can't do, Roland. That was 1968. We've got to always remember where we have come from in order to understand where we're going. And that's why it's so important that we recognize what the sanitation workers did back then. And you were there 5 years ago for the 50th anniversary where we planned
guys, go to my iPad, because this here is the wreath laying ceremony. We were broadcasting live there that took place at the spot where those two sanitation workers
we had thousands of people
were killed. And their family members were there as well. And what was crazy was that when we were there, 50 years later, they were still fighting for a lot of the same stuff from 68.
And they still continue to fight today. And they're faced with some of the same, not the exact same kinds of issues, but they're still fighting for decent wages. They're still fighting for decent benefits. They're still fighting to be treated like men, providing an essential public service in the city of Memphis. And that's why we've got to continue to go back and talk about it. So what we've done this year, instead of actually going back to Memphis and having that big rally and the speeches in the church, and you were there, but we're doing podcasts so we can reach more people and talking about what happened in Memphis in 1968. So we've got Secretary Treasurer Emeritus Bill Lucey from AFSCME is on the podcast. We've got Reverend James Lawson is on the podcast. I'm on the podcast. We have Martin Luther King III on the podcast, talking about what the experience was back then, but how we can link it to the problems that we are still fighting today.
This here, folks, give me 1 second, y'all. I want to show you. This is the actual, let's see here, give me 1 second. Hold on, don't go to it yet. I didn't tell y'all to go to it yet. I'm trying to line it up. This is the actual monument. There's a monument that is there in Memphis to those workers. Go ahead now. And that monument actually has all the names of those workers. This is when we were broadcasting live from the unveiling of that particular monument, because that's outside of which church? It's not Mason Temple.
No, it's not Mason. It's the other church. It's I can't remember the name of the church.
It's I forgot the name of the church. It's the other church. Well, this is where all the meetings took place.
Right.
So, folks, if y'all go to our YouTube channel and you just type in MLK 50, type in MLK 50, you can actually see the live stream we did of that dedication. That's right. Yep.
Claiborne Temple.
You can see the live stream of that as well. You can actually see what took place there. Lee, we talk about where labor is today. It's very interesting. For years, I'll probably say, obviously, from Reagan, really through the end of Obama's term. I mean, you saw constant attacks on labor, Supreme Court Janus decision. But what's very interesting now, you are seeing a new generation of people who grew up under right to work, who now are going, that union thing don't sound bad. And now you see people trying to unionize Starbucks. You see people trying to unionize Amazon and other places as well.
Museums that we're organizing. 71% of the American public believes that unions are absolutely necessary in today's society.
That has to be the highest in a long time.
That's the highest in more than 50 years, okay? And they believe that. And you can see that there is much more organizing going on. But it's hard, because one of the things that we've got to do, and you and I have talked about this before, we need to change the labor laws in this country to enable workers who want to join a union to be able to join a union without being faced with being fired, coercion, or all those other kinds of things. And that's why you're seeing some of these organizing campaigns stalling right now, because the labor laws are not just in this country. And if somebody wants to form a union, they want to work for it, they should be able to form a union and have a seat at the table. We've got to continue to fight for that. But let me just say this also. We have come a long way since 1968, but we've still got a long way to go because every single day we have governors, especially in the public sector, who want to take collective bargaining rights away from public service workers. We're faced with this right now in the state of Florida, where you've got DeSantis, who is rolling through the legislature, and he's taking away collective bargaining rights for public service workers in that state.
Which disproportionately are African American. And then even when you look at high 5-figure, 6-figure jobs, we are disproportionately in those jobs in public sector as compared to private sector.
That's exactly right. And if he's successful there, and unfortunately I believe he will be because he controls that legislature, you've got other governors looking at this in red states saying, well, if he can do that, then we can do it next year. As a matter of fact, in Kentucky, the governor, the Democratic governor, vetoed the legislation that was supported by both the Senate and the House to take away collective bargaining rights. Unfortunately, there's a supermajority in Kentucky, and they'll probably get that supermajority to overrule the veto, and that will stand. So even though we've come a long way, we've got a long way to go.
That's why all the people all these people who can whine and complain, and yeah, I'm calling you fools out, especially all you idiots who want to call me a Democratic shield. Oh, all you doing is supporting the Democrats. Here's a perfect example. I keep telling y'all what happens when your asses don't vote, when all you do is complain, and then you want to try to say every party is the same. Look, let's say ball don't lie. You have examples right here where you have Republicans that are hardcore against collective bargaining. Democrats, for the most part, and almost nearly every case, supports it. So you tell me which one makes sense to support if you go into the ballot box. See, I keep trying to explain to people the difference between how do you impact black folks specifically, as opposed to just thinking, oh, it's all the same, and it's all a big waste of my time. And a lot of these people out here, and yeah, I'm gonna say it, a bunch of you silly-ass FBA B1 people who y'all tweet and talk who know nothing about politics. I see y'all commenting on Rock Newman's page. I just did an interview with him talking about this very issue. On Vlad TV, on The Breakfast Club, on Ebro in the morning, and y'all keep saying, oh, all you want to do is support Democrats. Okay, this is real simple. What do you want, collective bargaining or not? Support the Republicans, want to get rid of it, support Democrats, they support it. Kind of basic to me, but some of y'all think y'all so smart about politics. Hold on one second, got to go to a break. We come back, Pound got some questions for Lee. We'll talk more about, again, the 55th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, but also the focus on workers. King was focused on economics. What do I keep telling y'all? If you're not having a money conversation, you're not having an American conversation. We'll be right back.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, re-entry anxiety. A lot of us are having trouble transitioning in this post-pandemic society and don't even realize it. We are literally stuck between two worlds, in purgatory. How to get out of purgatory and regain your footing and balance.
What emotions they're feeling and being able to label them, because as soon as you label an emotion, it's easier to self-regulate. It's easier to manage that emotion.
On the next A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Teresa Griffin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're talking with Lee Saunders, the president and CEO of AFSCME. We're talking about the run-up to the 55th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King on April 4th of this year. Questions, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, you're an economist. You, as I always say, we ain't having a money conversation. We're not having an American conversation.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to see Lee talking about that anniversary. Happy to think about that powerful sign that Black men had to hold up to say, I am a man. Why did you have to assert your manhood? Because America essentially degraded it. But more than that, why did we have to see the kind of degradation and violence against people in the workplace? People who lost their legs because they jumped on balers because they were required to. And Lee can attest to this. People lost their legs. They lost their lives simply trying to pick up garbage, simply trying to do their work. And the economic story is this. Black men were making 50 cents an hour less than white men were. So even as they had greater culpability, did not get the opportunity when it was raining. White boys went inside, brothers had to be outside. This is the condition that our people dealt with. Lee, first of all, you know, I appreciate you, adore you, think you do the best work in the world. But secondly, let's just reflect on this because we're going backwards. One of the things I've been covering lately is child labor legislation. And many states have now relaxed child labor laws. And now we have children in mines again, children in agriculture, teenagers doing 40 hours a week. What is SEIU doing to deal with the ways that labor rights have been taken back?
Lee, go ahead.
We've got to connect the dots, Julianne. We've got to make sure that we understand the struggles that took place in the past. And that's why we're talking about what happened in Memphis in 1968. Because people don't understand, they don't get it. And there is a direct connection between what's continuing to happen now in states across the country as far as attacking our freedoms, attacking our democracy, attacking our rights with the same kinds of things that they were doing in 1968. I mean, you look at this, okay, where they're trying to change the curriculum in schools where we can't even teach. They don't want people to talk about and teach the struggles that existed in the African-American community. They don't want to learn about the strike that happened in 1968. We have got a responsibility within our community, and for those who understand that a history is a part of us, where we continue to talk about those issues, so we can move forward, so we can understand that there was a fight and there was a struggle, and there continues to be a fight and struggle with people trying to take those freedoms and democracy away from us. And we've got to make our voices heard loud and clear. And the way that we do that is to mobilize and organize and educate, continue to do that, our communities every single day. We cannot let people forget. We can't let people, kind of say, well, it doesn't mean anything for us to be involved. That's not the case at all. We've got to hook up. If those sanitation workers risk their lives every single day during that strike, then we have a responsibility to carry that momentum forward. And that's what we've got to do all across this country.
And before I go to Jason, this is, if y'all want to see a great interview, Bill Lucy interviews, go to our YouTube channel. This is it right here. And remember, when they had protests in the Middle East, they were carrying I am a man sign. So understand how that iconic sign has been used across the world in other protests. Jason.
Yes, thank you very much for coming on. I guess my question is, we've seen our economy expand in many different ways. Is there any way where unions can expand into the gig economy? And have you seen anything where unions are starting to help people who work at Uber and other things where they're in the gig economy? And my other question is, have you seen any kind of issues in your unions with non-citizens and people who are citizens? And has that caused any friction within the unions?
Well, let me say this. As far as the gig economy is concerned, we're trying to organize in that sector, but the laws are stacked against us right now. You've got to go state by state. We've got some laws passed in some states that are being challenged by those companies, and they tie it up in referendum because those workers deserve to be organized. They deserve to have a seat at the table, and we're continuing to fight for that. But it's an uphill battle because of the labor law reform that is absolutely needed in this country. You know, something that the unions do across the country is bring people together. Whether you're African American, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Asian, whether you are coming from another country, people are coming here for a better life. And who provides that better life? We strongly believe, and I strongly believe, that it's unions like AFSCME and other unions who are dedicated and committed to organizing, to fighting for workers, and having a seat at that table. And we're going to continue to do that, but the odds are stacked against us because we don't have the kind of reform that we really need in order for workers to feel comfortable in organizing. Remember that figure that I talked about earlier. 71% of the American public want to see strong unions. 71%, the highest it's been in more than 50 years. But in order for us to do that, we've got to have labor law reform because we will just be stonewalled and stopped dead in our tracks by these major corporations that don't want to see their workforces organized.
Renita?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you to Lee for coming on, and also publicly thank you to AFSCME. I always tell people that I probably would not have been elected to the Georgia House of Representatives if it were not for local AFSCME union here in Georgia. My question is, you know, last year I tried to run a bill to organize collective bargaining for Georgia public service employees, which Georgia is one of those states where public employees do not have the right to do collective bargaining. And a part of the legislation, I was trying to put in an ability for employees to be able to strike. And what I ran into was opposition that frankly surprised me. And that opposition was within organized labor, a divide on whether or not it's too much to ask for and too much to push for to ask for public employees to be able to strike. So my question to you is, where is organized labor on realizing that without the ability to strike, your union really doesn't have any power, even if you are talking about public service employees?
You're going to have a difference of opinion among some of the unions who represent public service workers. We historically believe that all workers should have the right to strike, but especially in the public sector, where we don't have the labor laws that private sector workers have. In the past, we have also supported binding arbitration, where if in fact you're stalled in negotiations and you aren't coming to an agreement, then a third party comes in, listens to both sides, and then will give a decision that has to be recognized by both parties. In the absence of the right to strike, we have supported those kinds of measures in the public sector. And you have a number of unions that prefer having binding arbitration, as long as you have that third party coming in and making that decision based upon the information that's provided by both parties. But in the private sector, I mean, the right to strike is there. I mean, it's different than in the public sector. But we believe that workers should have a seat at the table. They should be treated fairly, and we should be able to come to a conclusion within those negotiations where both parties believe that it's the right thing to do, and we're supporting those workers who provide essential services every single day.
All right, then. Well, Lee, we appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Where's the you're doing different podcasts? Where's it going to be heard?
They're going to be starting, the podcasts are going to be starting, I believe, the end of this week. They're going to be like 5 or 6 segments. So you'll be hearing it all over and however the social media picks it up. But we think this is going to be a big deal. I've been doing interviews with major networks across the country talking about this. So we would say, you know, people listen to what we've got to say and what these leaders have got to say, and listen to what we've got to do to continue to fight and to continue to organize and mobilize our folks.
All right. Well, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll keep doing what we're doing, giving folks hell and covering the stuff that matters. We don't waste time with all the fluff and gossip and stuff along those lines. So we prefer real news.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks a bunch.
Okay.
Folks, hold tight 1 second. Got to go to a break. More Roland Martin Unfiltered, including honoring the great Randall Robinson, who passed away on Friday at the age of 81. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, everyone. I'm Godfrey, and you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered. And while he's doing Unfiltered, I'm practicing the wobble.
Lenara Riley has been missing from her Somerville, Tennessee home since March 20th, 2023. The 17-year-old is 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighs 140 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She may need medical attention. Anyone with information about Lenara Riley should please call the Jackson, Tennessee Police Department at 731-425-8400, 731-425-8400. Virginia cop is losing his job and is subject to a criminal investigation for shooting and killing an unarmed shoplifting suspect. Officers suspected Timothy Johnson had stolen items from a Tyson's Corner shopping center on February 22nd. Sergeant Wesley Shiflett and police officer First Class James Sadler gave chase and fired 3 total shots. The investigation found Shiflett fired the fatal shot Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis said Shiflett was terminated because he did not meet the expectations of the police department by violating the use of force policies, protocols, and procedures. Shiflett contends he was protecting himself from a suspect who refused all police commands, believing he was in jeopardy of serious bodily harm. Sadler remains on modified restricted duty. See, this is the thing right here, Jason, is always a trip to me. When they're chasing somebody, if they're not pointing a gun at you or a weapon, how is your life in danger if they're running away for shoplifting?
Yeah, I mean, it's just absurd. You know, I think we're all just tired of this kind of stuff. You know, killing somebody over shoplifting or over sunglasses, pulling weapons over that kind of stuff is just ridiculous. It's a pair of sunglasses. You probably could, you know, find the person later. I mean, it's just something that I think people across this country, and we saw it in 2020, people are tired of it. We cannot continue without some sort of serious police reform. And I think the people in Washington need to start getting serious about this so we can stop all this, you know, unnecessary death over small infractions.
Absolutely. It just makes no sense, Renita, well, these things just continue.
Right. And as I always say, you know, there's a reason that Black people are 3 to 4 times more likely to be killed by police. White people also shoplift, but you do not see them being murdered by police who are deciding to be the judge, jury, and executioner right there on the spot. And so, you know, in this case, I'm glad that the officer was fired, but the last update I saw, no charges have been filed. And so at the end of the day, the officer being fired, great, but that's not going to bring back this person who was killed. It's not going to bring, it's not going to do a lot for his loved ones. And so in order to stop this police violence that we as Black people are being disproportionately burdened with, it's going to require solutions that people have not previously considered, like removing police from having so much interaction with the public. And so we can continue with the circular solutions, and nobody wants to hear about removing police from having so many interaction with the public, but that is what it's going to take, because I'll guarantee you that the officer who did this does not have a track record of shooting white people for shoplifting.
Julianne?
You know, shoplifting should not get you the death penalty. Shoplifting should get you 30 days in jail, perhaps. So basically, this, as Renita said, this officer was judge, jury, executioner in this case. We've had too much of this. But the challenge is, we've had this conversation, Roland, on your show and other places so many times before. And look at that pretty smile. But we've had these conversations, and as we have the conversations, we're all agitated, we're frustrated, we're angry, and what happens next? And what happens next is, unfortunately, that our nation becomes silent. It's likely okay to kill a Black man for stealing some sunglasses. Put him up under the jail, but do not kill him. The question that we all have to ask is, where do we go from here? You, Roland Martin, have been a wonderful beacon of light on these cases, but a beacon of light is not enough. What will we do? This keeps happening. It's so frustrating to see so many young Black men killed because of white fear, your book, white discretion, white ignorance that gets away with, oh, gee, I was afraid of my life. Well, you know, if you're afraid of your life that much, go away. Just go away. You don't have to be a police officer. I'm as angry as anyone else is. In fact, I'm tamping it down because I have some stuff to say that I don't want to say on the air that begins with an M and ends with a R and with an F in the middle. I'm just sick of this. We're all sick of this. But we're sick of it. What do we do about it?
Indeed, folks. The Department of Justice is cracking down on those violating the civil rights of others. A white Wisconsin man pleads guilty to slashing his neighbor's tires and writing racist threats, demanding his Black neighbors leave the neighborhood. William McDonald confessed to vandalizing his neighbor's cars and leaving racist notes multiple times over 2 years. The FBI got some help from local police during the investigation. Officers pulled McDonald over last March and had him with his email address on the paperwork. The FBI concluded the handwriting on the racist notes matched. McDonald's sentencing is set for June 29th. He faces up to 11 years in prison. In Oklahoma, a former detention officer at the McLean County Jail pled guilty to civil rights violations for moving a detainee into a jail cell where they were later attacked. Prosecutors say Kyle Tecumseh moved a pretrial detainee into a jail cell with white supremacist gang members who he knew the gang members were upset with. Tecumseh faces up to a year in jail and a $100,000 fine. Again, thank God we actually have a real Department of Justice, Jason.
Absolutely. We have to definitely give credit to Merrick Garland. I think he's taken a lot of heat from both sides, people wanting certain investigations to conclude, wanting things to move really quickly, but people are oftentimes missing out on some of these smaller cases around the country that the Department of Justice is actually pursuing and getting results on. So before people get too hard on Merrick Garland because they want to see, one individual or another in handcuffs, first of all, recognize that those kind of investigations take a really long time and you can never have too much evidence. But on top of that, we also have to realize that he's getting results in a lot of these smaller cases, including things like Breonna Taylor and this one that you just mentioned. I think it's really important that we do have Merrick Garland in there. And to echo your point earlier about voting, these are the consequences of elections. You can have Jefferson Beauregard Sessions in there. You can have Bill Barr, who makes stuff up in the Attorney General's office, or you can have someone like Merrick Garland who actually pursues these things and makes sure that killer cops don't get away scot-free, like in the case of Breonna Taylor, or people who are actually putting people's lives in danger, like this jail corrections officer here. So this is really important. This is why you go out and vote. This is why you cast your ballot, so that the right people are in the right positions and they actually pursue justice.
Well, the person I'm giving credit for is Kristen Clark, who is the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She's the one who is actually doing that hard work there. Folks, Vice President Kamala Harris has begun her week-long trip to the continent of Africa, stopping in Ghana. She is there. This is her arriving in Ghana. There was a huge celebration of her landing there. There's an extensive delegation of folks that along with her, including Mark Morial, CEO of the National Urban League, Spike Lee and his wife, and many others. Here is the VP speaking there.
Let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
Folks, these are images of the vice president and her trip there, again, to Ghana. They were met at the airport with a welcome there in Ghana. A number of people were out there to greet the vice president. That's the president of Ghana there, just to her left, to our right. And so what we're going to be doing, obviously, of course, mainstream media won't be giving lots of attention to this. Let's roll a video, guys, you have right there. There's an official state dinner happening that happened tonight in Ghana as well. And that's the vice president there with the president of Ghana. And so we'll have that coverage right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered every single day. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the life and legacy of Randall Robinson, the founder of Trans-Africa, activist, author, an amazing humanitarian, passed away on Friday at the age of 81 at his home in St. Kitts. We'll talk about his life and legacy next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, folks, to support us in what we do. Download our app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We're out here fighting a good fight, trying to get these advertisers to support Black-owned media, but your support is important as well, so please join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send check-in money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $ RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And we'll be right back.
A lot of these corporations or people that are running stuff push black people if they're doing a certain thing. What that does is it creates a butterfly effect of any young kid who, wants to leave any situation they're in, and the only people they see are people that are doing this. So I gotta be a gangster, I gotta shoot, I gotta sell, I gotta do this in order to do it. And it just becomes a cycle. But when someone comes around and is making we don't, they don't want to push it or put money into it. So that's definitely something I'm trying to fix too, is just show there's other avenues. You don't gotta be a rapper, you don't gotta be a ball player, you can be a country singer, you can be an opera singer, you can be a damn whatever, showing the different avenues. And that is possible, and it's hard for people to realize it's possible until someone does it.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, re-entry anxiety. A lot of us are having trouble transitioning in this post-pandemic society and don't even realize it. We are literally stuck between two worlds, in purgatory. How to get out of purgatory and regain your footing and balance.
What emotions they're feeling and being able to label them, because as soon as you label an emotion, it's easier to self-regulate. It's easier to manage that emotion.
On the next A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Yo, what's up? This your boy Ice Cube.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So, folks, it was a sad Saturday morning for me when I got a text message from the daughter of Randall Robinson, Kalia, that her dad had passed away. Randall Robinson, human rights activist, lawyer, advocate, fighting on behalf of African Americans, people of African descent all across the globe, died on Friday around dawn at his home there in St. Kitts, where he had left the United States to go to the home country of his wife, Hazel. He passed away due to pneumonia. He was 81 years old, folks. He was involved in a variety of foreign policy campaigns to defend democracy and justice in Africa, the Caribbean, and Haiti. Randall Robinson was born in Richmond, Virginia, and he attributed his activism later in life to his experiences dealing with segregation in Virginia. He earned his law degree from Harvard Law School, worked as a civil rights attorney in Boston, and later served as a professor of human rights and law at Penn State University, wrote a number of books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Debt. He founded the foreign policy advocacy organization TransAfrica in 1977 in Washington, D.C. TransAfrica promoted diversity and equity in the foreign policy arena and for justice for the African world. He served as president of TransAfrica until 2001, later becoming one of the leaders of the Free South Africa movement, which began in the 1980s and pushed to end apartheid. A funeral service will be held in St. Kitts in April. A memorial service will be held here in Washington, D.C. in May. Joining us from D.C. is someone who knew him well, who stood with him fighting on a number of issues. Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Congresswoman, always glad to see you. Randall Robinson was an extraordinary human being.
Roland, I can't tell you how devastated I am learning of the passing of my dear friend, Randall Robinson. Randall and Hazel are two of my closest friends, and we have worked on so many projects together. I served on the board of Trans-Africa. I worked with Randall Robinson on getting rid of apartheid in South Africa. As a matter of fact, I was with Randall visiting him when he decided to go on a starvation diet in support of Haiti. He went into the basement of Trans-Africa building where he stayed on that starvation diet for weeks, absolutely bringing attention to what was going on in Haiti. And of course, we both traveled to the Central African Republic where we retrieved Aristide and brought him back to Jamaica before he ended in South Africa and coming back to Haiti eventually. But I believe we saved his life in the way that we went up there, rented a plane, and brought him back. But then I worked with him on the issue on bananas in the Caribbean, where the WTO had basically undermined the trade from the little countries in the Caribbean that basically raised that banana, and they, received, the profits from those bananas to put their children through school. And the WTO teamed up, and the United States was part of it, and basically stripped them of the ability to trade that banana. So between the Caribbean, all of the Caribbean, and especially Haiti, and of course, the work that we did with Nelson Mandela and the ANC, this was all a part of my life. This was a part of what Randall and I and Hazel and so many of us did when we were struggling to make sure that the United States, adopted the right policies in South Africa. And so I will be in St. Kitts. The funeral is next Thursday, I believe it is. I will be there. I'm going to be at that funeral. And of course, I'll be at the memorial when it is held in Washington, D.C. It is a great loss. He was a brilliant, articulate activist who absolutely was committed to the proposition of justice and freedom for all. He was an intellectual. He was a writer of books. And he was someone who was not afraid. He had the courage of his convictions. He's one of a kind, and what a loss. I'm devastated. And thank you for the attention that you're putting on his life and whom he was and what he did for this country and for the world. I appreciate you so much, Roland, for the time that you are putting on him, because he was a most important and valuable human being in service to his country and to his fellow man. Thank you so very much.
A lot of people don't quite understand what those battles were like. And here is someone, you mentioned conviction, who was smart, brilliant, but who also understood that you can't get it done if you don't mobilize and organize. And there were so many people who had to be brought together to deal with the release of Mandela, but not just the release of Mandela, but to literally to end apartheid there. And then to end to also to fight the United States and other countries, what they were doing in Haiti and other places as well. And so for the people in this country, a lot of these folks now who say we shouldn't be concerned about other people in other countries, let's focus just on African Americans. Randall Robinson understood that you cannot fight for the African American experience if you do not make it an African diaspora fight.
You're absolutely right. And he understood this better, I think, than most people. And he was committed to the ANC. And I think he has said we would love an opportunity to talk with Thabo Mbeki, who was one of the leaders who is with an economic background that traveled the world. And we worked with him in every way that we possibly can. But he not only understood that Africa and South Africa with an apartheid system could not last and must not last, and that we had to do everything that we could to the people of South Africa, the Black people of South Africa, who were living in such terrible conditions. As you know, they were relegated to the Bantu Sands, where they didn't have running water. They lived in tents, and they were overseen by the apartheid government at night with these big machines and stuff that they use to keep them under surveillance. And he knew the story about this. He had followed it. I worked with him. Many young people all over the United States worked with him. The colleges became alive because of him. The members of Congress really came alive with Ron Dellums working with him to get rid of apartheid in South Africa. He was our leader for sure. Absolutely.
Indeed, indeed. The thing that, and the other thing is that what people don't realize, he was obviously very serious, but had a wicked sense of humor.
I beg your pardon?
I said he was serious, focused, but also had a wicked sense of humor.
Oh, he did, because he was so brilliant. And he could make, not only an individual or people in a small room, but in a big crowd in his speeches. He did have a very good sense of humor. And so he was a total human being who was an intellectual with absolute brilliant capacity to deal with, the big complicated problems of the world. He was a husband. He was a father. He was a total human being that lived a life that all of his family can be proud of. His brother was a brilliant journalist. He came from a wonderful background. And so the pictures that you're displaying of him shows him with some of the other leaders in the world, the total man that he was. Yes, sense of humor. Yes, intellectual. Yes, journalist. Yes, spokesperson. Yes, advocate. He was all of this. What a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Indeed. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, always great to have you. And we appreciate you joining us to pay tribute to Randall Robinson.
And thank you so very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Folks, we're going to go to a break right now, but we're going to, hold on, kill that music. We're going to go to break right now. Cue that music, please. Thank you. We're going to play the other music. In 2015, Randall Robinson, his wife Hazel, invited my wife and I to St. Kitts. They had a number of family and friends there for a big gathering around New Year's, and I was just literally, I didn't realize I even had it with me, so I found some of the photos from that. So we're going to go to a break, showing you some of those images. We had a fabulous time there 8 years ago as we celebrate the life and legacy of Randall Robinson. Back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network in a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
This is Judge Mathis.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mac Wiles, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So this is one of the photos, folks, I shot. This is Randall Robinson dancing with his daughter, Kalia. There was a New Year's Eve celebration. And so this is one of the photos I shot. And I just realized I shot so many, y'all, I was shooting everything. I don't think I actually got a photo of me and Randall. I was shooting everybody else. But that's how it happens. And actually, part of the reason I'm also upset, I don't have any video because literally my backpack was stolen here in D.C. on a hard drive with all the videos. And other stuff was on there, but I do have a lot of the images. And so that was an absolute fun night we had, fun trip we had in St. Kitts. And so that's an image there of Randall and his daughter, Kalia, who I met actually when she was a student at MIT when I spoke there for, I think it was an MLK program. Folks, my next guest is a member of the Commission of the National African American Reparations, pastor of Empowerment Temple AME in Baltimore, Reverend Robert Turner. Reverend Turner, glad to have you here. My panel is still with me, Julian Malveaux, Rita Shannon, Jason Nichols. I'm going to pull them in as well. Reverend Turner, I'll start with you. In Randall Robinson's book, The Debt, it was a trilogy of books. He talked about the idea of reparations, and he really explained it in a way that, again, wasn't solely about African Americans, but he laid out the narrative of the African diaspora and what America, but also the world, owes people of African descent.
Yes, and again, to echo Congress Lady Maxine Waters, Roland, thank you for highlighting this brother's life. What Randall Robinson did before the great work of Ta-Nehisi Coates in The Atlantic, before several other articles and books that have followed since 2000. Back in 2000, this brilliant mind of a man, Randall Robinson, wrote The Debt. And it literally transformed a generation and exposed scholars, students, and activists to empirical data on why reparations is not just some pie in the sky ideal, but it is something you can put numerical value to. And he highlighted the harms, the gross negligence, and the reckless abandonment of the American government for centuries, not just before 1865, but even in subsequent years following, to current suffering through mass incarceration and other terrible policies that grossly impact the Black community.
When he wrote those books, again, what he did was he connected the dots. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand. By connecting the dots of Columbus not founding anything, frankly, I even talked about St. Kitts and other Caribbean nations, like people were already there when Columbus showed the hell up. So it's not like he, founded any of those countries, and how you had indigenous people who were there. He was an historian walking people through the history of our people.
Absolutely, and he was also well versed in church history. He highlights in his book when they were choosing the Pope that there was some discussion about it being the first one from Africa, and he noted that we've had already 2, possibly 3 popes born in the mainland African continent. So he was very well versed, and he connected the dots on so many levels, economically, religiously, politically, to Black history, Black thought. He was very well versed in Egyptian. The ideology of the Egyptians concerning the 12 months of the year that predates the Greek 12 months. They got it from us in Africa, in Egypt particularly. He was just an outstanding mind who was impervious to the apathy of mainstream America that really could care less about Black people or Black thought.
Julian, the book, folks, The Debt, show to my iPad, please. It was called The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks. You see there was on the cover the quote there from now, of course, no longer exists, Emerge magazine, led by George Curry. Rest in peace, George. A tour de force, heartfelt, impassioned. And he really opened a lot of people's eyes to the history of our people in this country. And I keep saying, connecting the dots.
Precisely, Roland. It was such an important book, but he was such an important man. I'm happy to see my brother, Robert Turner. We both serve on the National African American Reparations Commission. And that commission, of course, has been moving the work that Brother Robinson laid a foundation for, and so many others when we talk about reparations. I have so many fond memories of Randall Robinson. Spending some time with him when he was fasting for Haiti, and going to his hotel room with my tape recorder, and he was fasting. He was committed. That's the kind of commitment we don't see. What is important about the Randall Robinson legacy is this. He was not like these ADOS people who say, we want to give reparations to only the descendants of enslaved people. He understood the notion of diaspora, of the ways that we're connected. The boat that landed in Virginia stopped in Haiti or stopped someplace else. So these folks who want to say, let's have narrow reparations are not really looking at the way that the predatory capitalist United States and other Western countries exploited us all. Randall Robinson, his legacy, as I said, is just a treasure. His presence was incandescent. But even more importantly than that, what do we build on that? Trans-Africa survived for another decade after his transition. I was on the board for a couple of minutes, and Bill Fletcher, of course, succeeded Randall. But who could succeed Randall? I mean, who really could? We are deficient when we don't lift up the notion of the African world. And I'll share one last thing. We were in, I forget where, someplace in Africa. I think we were in Ghana, for a conference. He came and flew back. He came to speak and flew back. And I said, dude, are you going to hang out? He's like, no, I got to go right back. That was his commitment. He literally did a 24-hour turnaround to come and say a few words because he felt that the work was that important. When do we feel that that work is that important?
Jason Nichols, you teach this stuff. Your reflections on Randall Robinson.
It brings me back to the college classroom where I first read The Debt. And what was so amazing about that was the discussion that it caused in the classroom. I mean, everybody was so engaged because, for many of us, reparations, though people have been talking about it for generations, for a lot of us college students, Black, white, and otherwise, this was our first, exposure to that idea. And when we, of course, read the statistics that he put out there, I think the debt he said was $6 trillion at the time, if I'm not mistaken. That was a long time ago. But, and us going back and forth. And I remember going home and having the discussion with my dad and saying, you got to read this book. And this is what, this is what Randall Robinson is saying. And he had his opinions and his ideas about it. And it just really was one of those moments that made me want to do what it is that I do, that made me basically never leave the classroom, because it was like one of those moments where it sparked your mind and it made you think and it made you reason. And everyone was having these really fruitful discussions about what the future should look like. And that's what education is all about, particularly in Black studies. So he was a big influence upon me, and I know upon many of my classmates, and of course many of my colleagues. So he's definitely a special figure in a lot of our minds because of the discussions that he raised, and of course his advocacy for South Africa before that was so incredibly important, particularly for college students and people on university campuses. It really was. After, of course, the 60s and the 70s, it was one of those times where people, particularly Black students, got really engaged on college campuses. So that, of course, is something that we try to carry forward today, and we try to mentor students to be engaged in the world around them, and even places that they may never see in their lifetime, to be concerned about humanity. And that's what Randall Robinson kind of represents to me, just an intellectual giant, and someone who engaged young people, and one of those young people at one point was me.
Renita?
Yes, as you know, I won't repeat what everybody else has said, but Randall Robinson was such an icon, from his work to standing against apartheid to supporting reparations. It just really shows the impact that one person can have, by themselves, really being committed to the principles that you believe in. And he really was one of the greatest thinkers, I would say, for Black people on these issues. One of the things that stood out to me about him was the way he talked about how white supremacy influences policy, and that being one of the reasons that he decided to move abroad. That's still a conversation that is relevant today and not something that people think a lot about, but it's one of those things that, really just sort of gets you to investigate a little more some of the things that we take for granted every day. And I don't think that is regularly connected enough, that so much of policy still is written for the people who have been able to vote the longest, which is white men in this country. And so I'll be forever grateful for the work that he did and the conversations that he sparked. And we've lost a giant.
Robert, final thoughts.
I'm challenged. I'm motivated. I'm inspired by the life of Randall Robinson. It hurts when you think about who we lost as a person. Thankful we still have his treasure in his work, his book that I still read on a regular basis. But I'm also troubled by the fact that we have lost so much of what we had from, as you stated, the emerge from the organization that he had found. We are really in great need as a community to support our own institutions. So I'm happy to see the hoodie you have on for Dillard University, and support our own networks. Because if we're not careful, if we continue to lose what we have, the things that people like Randall Robinson built, we won't have much left for my kids, my two boys, to even be a part of.
Indeed. Reverend Robert Turner, we surely appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Folks, I just posted our special in a media chat room, a Black media chat room, with different Black journalists and others. And this person said that he was my 6th grade commencement speaker. Feels like it would be a huge deal today. And yes, there are some media outlets that have done stories, NPR, New York Times, and others. But the reality is, when we lose our own, let's just be honest, mainstream white media, if they are not big figures that they consider to be big, the crossover, then they don't actually give the kind of attention. That's why Black-owned media absolutely matters, because we do give this level of attention. One of the things that I regret is that Randall and I were talking about me doing a documentary on Max Robinson, his brother, the first Black network news anchor. And we traded emails back and forth, and I just kept saying, I would text his daughter, would say, hey, because Randall and Hazel had planned on moving back to the United States. COVID hit, that delayed that, and I was like, periodically I would say, hey, when are they coming back? And this is crazy. I sent the treatment. It was called Finding Max to a couple of folks, and it was actually on Friday. I literally was thinking about Randall, saying, man, I need to just grab our cameras and get them on tape. And I said the same thing about Bernard Shaw. And of course, he passed away a little bit earlier this year as well, and never got a chance to do that. And I hate that we did not do it, which is why it's always important. Just get it down. Just get it down, because again, those reflections are critically important. But when we come back, folks, we're going to take a break. We come back, we're going to hear from Randall Robinson, an interview that I did with him. We're going to go to the break. This is a photo here of Randall and his wife Hazel when we were there in St. Kitts with him and the two of them, Kalia, their whole family and friends, with just a fabulous time. And so this was December, this was New Year's Eve, 2014. And we'll go to the break. We'll come back and we'll hear from Randall Robinson talking about Winnie Mandela. And I'll tell you how that interview actually happened. This was an interview that I did with him 5 years ago. Folks, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys. This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey everybody, it's your man Fred Hammond.
I'm Deion Cole, you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Stay woke.
It literally was this time 5 years ago. I was in Memphis. We were preparing for MLK 50, the 50th anniversary for the commemoration of the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. While we were there, I actually ran into Randall Robinson in the hotel there in Memphis. Earlier that day, Winnie Mandela had died. And he and I sat down and we talked about her life and legacy. The total video that we have, you go to our YouTube channel, it's there. The interview was about 20 minutes. I'm going to play about 12 minutes of that before we actually end the show. But here's Randall Robinson and I talking in Memphis 5 years ago about Winnie Mandela.
Message about the passing of Winnie Mandela. And I ran to Reverend Jackson, so I quickly interviewed him. And then when I saw the schedule that you were going to be here, I said, I know he has something to say about Winnie Mandela. Because your paths surely have crossed.
She was an extraordinarily courageous woman. She kept his memory alive when he was in prison. And she was not well treated while he was in prison. And it was tough for her. But she stood her ground. She was a remarkably strong woman. And I met her several times on my visits to South Africa. And she was always warm and concerned about how the struggle was going stateside, and a good person, and very smart. And as I said before, when I keep coming back to it, extremely courageous.
One of the things that I interviewed her in 2010. One of the questions I asked her was the role that women played, and I compared it to this, to the civil rights movement, and how women did not get the credit they deserved. And she said the women and children were huge in taking down apartheid.
Well, I'm not surprised. She is the best testimony for that. She knew better than I did. And so if she said it, I believe it.
You were running Trans-Africa, and obviously apartheid in South Africa was at the top of that agenda. And I remind people what those Polaroid workers did to really kick this divestment thing off. I interviewed Ron Dellums, and he said, we didn't know about what was happening in South Africa until they came and told us. And so when you think about Winnie Mandela, Reverend Jackson said the key is, he said, unlike a lot of the other ANC leaders, she never left. She stayed in that country. She faced down those white racists who were in power, who were on those police forces, and who brutalized her.
She might easily have left, but she didn't. And that took some courage to decide to stay. Many left the country during that period, but she didn't. That's the best evidence of what she was made of.
She's called the mother of South Africa. But the shine, if you will, the trial she went through took a lot of that off. Divorcing Nelson Mandela took a lot of that off. But I still say you cannot deny her significance in terms of him getting out of prison and that country becoming free from under colonial rule. from under white rule.
I was on the NBC telecast the day that he came out of prison, and she walked out with him, and how uplifting that stroll that they took together out of that place. She was an incredible woman, and I was always very proud of her, as I was of him, and that they made, I thought, an extraordinary couple. Now, if a relationship doesn't survive 27 years of apartness, well, that's entirely understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Not many marriages, particularly a marriage under the pressure that hers was under, would reasonably have a good chance of surviving that. So I don't think that's any kind of mark against her on the record, or nor him. It's a long time.
First of all, a lot of marriages don't last 27 years. Talk about being apart 27 years.
Absolutely.
And I gotta ask you this here. I was texting someone, and we were talking about MLK 50. We were talking about the condition Memphis is in, Black African Americans with contracts and workers. And I said, you know what? We don't use the word apartheid to describe what we went through. I said, frankly, we should. We talk about Black freedom movement, civil rights movement, we talk about Jim Crow. I said, but the reality is, when you really begin to sit down and look at completely being frozen out of so many sectors, looking at education and so many different things, I said, I use this example in my speeches that if you talk about 1619, 244 years of slavery, Reconstruction, nearly 100 years of Jim Crow. So I said, if you use 19 King is killed in 68. I said, if you use the marker of 1970, I said, Black folks have only been free in this country for 48 years.
When you count backwards from the 1964 Civil Rights Act to the landing of 20 enslaved people in the belly of a slave ship at Jamestown Landing, we come up with a figure of 331 years. Now, the Jewish Holocaust was 12 years. Our Holocaust was much, much longer than that, in which we lost everything. I was speaking today about having seen Africans arrive on our shores as chattel property. And they were Africans nonetheless, who brought cultures, who brought collaborative cultures, who brought languages, who brought religion, brought all of that with them when they came. When I was born in 1941, I was a Negro. How could that happen? We were Africans in the 1600s, and all of a sudden, we're Negroes. It means that we
You want to check out Roland Unfiltered? Folks, that is some of that interview there I did there with Randall Robinson. Again, an absolutely extraordinary figure. And this is why it's always important for you to use services to back stuff up. So I was sitting here going, dang, what I said, my videos, a lot of the photos. And so, I had a Flickr account where I actually had uploaded all of the photos and videos. This is a photo of Randall Robinson, Hazel, my wife Jackie, and myself when we were there in St. Kitts. It was a fabulous, fabulous time we had with them. And we definitely was looking forward to returning. And then I also, of course, will end the show on this. And again, I'm telling you, this is why Black-owned media matters. What does that slogan from Freedom's Journal say? March 16, 1827, we wish to plead our own cause, too long have others spoken for us. But that's how we view this as well. And that's why we believe in paying tribute to our own. I don't care what mainstream media does or does not do. We will always honor and respect our own. And so we'll end this tribute to Randall Robinson with this photo I shot of Randall Robinson, Hazel Robinson, and their daughter, Kalia. Folks, thanks so much for watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.